It's that last moment. I get that question a lot, Paul. Is what's that last moment like? I mean, you know you're going to crash. You see it. There's no other options. The plane is going, head first into the Hudson River, which is one of the roughest rivers, current wise in the United States. And you got buildings all around you. You got a bridge. I mean, there's so many dynamics that are going on. And I just told people what happened to me is I thought I had two things. Number one, if I die, I'm going to a better place. So, number one, but number two, if I live, I have another option, a challenge. I got to get out, which we'll talk about in a second.
Yeah.
So, but I had the movie of my life pass before my eyes because it was like, I think that's what happens. I mean, it's just my personal belief is when you're in that last moments of potentially of your life, all of a sudden, your whole life passes before your eyes. You all of a sudden realize what your life is made up of.
Dave Sanderson, it's an absolute pleasure to welcome you to the Inner Entrepreneur podcast.
Paul, thank you very much for having me today. I'm excited.
I'm very excited as well. In the last couple of weeks, in the last week, which is slightly unusual for me, I suppose, I spent about 20 hours in the air. I had to travel over to Phoenix, from Dublin to Phoenix, spent 3 days there and get in a plane, 2 planes, and come back. So I'm about 20 hours in the air. Throughout that entire time, I felt completely safe. I never thought that I was going to crash into the ocean. But you have had that experience. So there's a couple of things I'm really interested to discuss with you. And for people who don't know who Dave Sanderson is, you've written a number of books. Certainly in the US, I don't know about Europe, you would be well recognized as a public speaker. But on January the 15th, 2009, you had a very, I'm sure, challenging and extraordinary experience. And you are what's now referred to as the miracle on the Hudson. You were in US Airways, was it Flight 1549 that crashed in the Hudson? And I've seen the movie. It's a wonderful movie. It's a great story. And so there's lots of questions that come to mind. And I'm going to throw a few at you, and then I'll let you take it where you want to go. Obviously, I say I'm really interested in what that must be like sitting in an airplane knowing you're going to crash and die or whatever. So that must be an extraordinary experience, which I'd love to hear about. But the second extraordinary thing is that you landed thanks to your captain. I think Sully is that what they call him?
Correct.
He landed in the Hudson, landed relatively safely, and I'm sure you all thought, oh, now we might live. Except you were the last passenger to emerge from that plane, which I think is also quite extraordinary because I think if it was me, I would want to be the first off the plane. So they're both extraordinary situations. So I'm really interested in that whole story, but I'm also interested in who Dave was before then, because I guess that who you were before then had a huge impact on how you experienced it and how you responded. So that's a lot of questioning, and that's kind of what fascinates me about this conversation. So over to you, sir.
Well, thank you very much, Paul. I appreciate it. And yes, it's that was a life-changing day. And the day before the January 15, 2009, I was in sales. I was in technology sales, working for a large company by the name of Oracle. So I was traveling a lot. In addition, as you and I had a conversation, I was also the head of security for a gentleman by the name of Tony Robbins at the same time. So I was traveling the world with him, supporting his mission and trying to help people around the world. And, I think in my first book I wrote myself is called Moments Matter, because it was all those moments in my life beforehand that led me to that moment. Because, you got to make all these small deposits, right? All your life you're making small deposits. And you hope you never have that one big withdrawal. But for me, that was the one big withdrawal because, I was very blessed to have a mentor came into my life in 1983 for 14 years. He was 77 in 1983 and basically taught me the mindset of success. And then when he passed away in 1997, he left me his notes that he wrote in 1929 about how he did it. And he just made me promise him, do not let it die with you. And so that's what drove me. But then, a couple of months later, Tony Robbins asked me to be the head of security for his team. And so I have another mentor come into my life. So the whole story really before Dave, January 15th, 2009, was the power of mentorship, being able to be around, and you've been around Tony. One of the things he preaches and one of the things one of the first things he taught us was proximity is power.
Yeah.
You got to be around people. Unfortunately, I've been around people who had took me under their wings and taught me things. So that got me to that point. So at least I had some background, some mindsets to handle it. But when you're going down in a plane crash, right? And some people call it a water ditching, and I know it's a landing. But, when you're in the plane and you're going down, it's a crash.
It's
All
a
right.
crash, for God's sake.
All depends on who you want to talk to, and they're all correct. All right. I'm not saying that the NTSB was wrong. I'm not saying that other people, but when you're going down, it's a crash. And it was a hard hit.
Yeah.
But, when it's that last moment, I get that question a lot, Paul. What's that last moment like? I mean, you're going to crash. You see it. There's no other options. The plane is going, head first into the Hudson River, which is one of the roughest rivers, current-wise in the United States. And you've got buildings all around you. You got a bridge. I mean, there's so many dynamics that are going on. And I just told people what happened to me is I thought I had two things. Number one, if I die, I'm going to a better place. So, number one. But number two, if I live, I have another option, a challenge. I got to get out, which we'll talk about in a second.
Yeah.
So, but I had the movie of my life pass before my eyes because it was like, I think that's what happens. I mean, it's just my personal belief. Is when you're in that last moments of potentially of your life, all of a sudden your whole life passes before your eyes. You all of a sudden realize what your life is made up of. And I think that's what happened to me. One thing I realized is I was working way too hard because I was focused on making money. And I said this in an interview on CBS on the 5th anniversary when I was interviewed. I said, I was on the mission of making money. And I realized I had 4 kids and a wife that I really I probably didn't spend enough time with because I was focused on doing what dads are supposed to do, right? But, all of a sudden, then you crash land, and all of a sudden things get really silent. And now you got a chance, but now the plane's sinking, all right, very quickly in water. And so now you got to get out. And so, I tell people the first half of this, getting the plane down, the captain and the first officer get all the credit. But after that, it was a team effort. Hmm. Everybody had to figure out their game plan and work together as a team. That's what I think I tell people. It's amazing. You have 155 people who did not know each other or care about each other come together so quickly on a common mission and execute. That just shows you there's a game plan. It's like we learned there's strategies, right? There's a strategy for how to do it. It's understanding the mission and executing the mission. So my game plan was, Paul, once we got down, the whole way down, I said, if I live, I got to figure out how I'm going to get out of this thing. It was aisle up, out. I kept saying in my mind, aisle up, out, aisle up, out, aisle up, out. So as you know, in our Tony world, you say it so much, it's in your body, right? So then you just do it, right? Yeah. So I knew that's what I was doing the whole way down, aisle up, out. So here it comes, right? And all of a sudden, the waters where I was at was about waist level deep. I was at 15A, which is about 4 rows behind the left wing. The back of the plane was just chest level deep, and the front of the plane was a little bit less because of the plane, the way it was angled. So, I was 36-degree water Fahrenheit.
Sorry, so when you crashed, the water was already in the plane?
Immediately. Because if you saw I don't know if you saw how the plane went down, went backside first, front side, then slid for about 100 yards.
Wow.
So the backside got hit, and which, number one, it opened up the back of the plane. Basically, part of the plane was ripped off in the back, so water started coming in immediately. So the back of the plane was much worse than the front of the plane. The middle of the plane, like I said, was about waist level. The back of the plane was about chest level. But when I got to the aisle, Paul, I had my game plan, right? But then something happened that changed that day and changed probably the direction of my life. And I heard my mom in my back of my mind start talking to me about something she told me when I was a kid. I just remembered it. It just came to my mind. It was, if you do the right thing, God will take care of you. And I tell people, I said, one of the great things about my mom was she never told us what to do. She made us make a decision, which is one of the things I think I failed at probably as a parent. And I should have made my kids make more decisions early in life. So when they get to the age they are now, they can make them, right? Fortunately, my mom, said, if you do the right thing. Now, the question is, what is the right thing for me? Right now, I could have easily gone out and that'd been the right thing to do. But in I grew up in a small town where everybody knew everybody and everybody took care of everybody. So instead of going out, I climbed over the seats to go towards the back of the plane, see if anybody needed help. So when I got to the back of the plane, that's when I found out it was about chest level deep. It was deep water. It was 36 degrees. The bins had broken open because of the impact. You got luggage just floating in the water. And I got behind the last person. I just started going behind the last person, and it was dark. So you sort of had to feel your way out a little bit, right? So I had to start where the chairs are, right? The seats are. And I saw a light on the right side of the plane. I'm like, I'm out of here, man. Time to go. And then I looked out, and there was no room on the boat or the wing for me. And that's how I became the last passenger out, because I was in the plane for 7 minutes, waist deep in 36-degree water, holding on to the lifeboat because the lifeboat was actually floating out into the river because of the current.
Mm-hmm.
See, that plane actually floated down the Hudson River approximately a half a mile in 24 minutes.
Wow.
So that plane's floating down the river, flight boat's floating out into the river, and they were yelling to hold on because no one knew. And I'd make a joke out of it, but it's not a joke. No one reads the brochure, right? No one reads the instructions, right? And we all know this stuff. Well, that lifeboat's actually tethered to the plane, but
So
they
it's
didn't know
going
that.
down as well.
So yeah, so I held on to the lifeboat waist deep in 36-degree water for 7 minutes. But one of the other parts of the story that doesn't get told a lot is the right side of the plane where I went out, a 10F on the right side, had to be managed by all passengers because the flight attendant got injured in the back. She was in the back of the plane, and steel or metal came through the bottom and ripped her leg. So she had to go out the front because she was injured. So the right side of the plane had to be managed by passengers like me who had zero training. As one of the things I'm very blessed to have my mentors, Bill and Tony and other people. One of the things about leadership, it's not about knowing everything that you need to know. It's about leading people, inspiring and influencing people in that moment. So I didn't have any training on how to do a plane crash. I mean, who trains on that except for flight attendants, right?
Yeah.
And the crew. But I did have leadership skills because of what I've done in my sales and with my leading a team at Tony Robbins. So I was very blessed to be able to have leadership. I was able to help in the leadership area, be able to get people where they need to be and move. And so that's what happened. We got everybody out, and I'm hanging outside the plane until one of the boats was part of the rescue. It was a tugboat. I don't know if you've seen a tugboat. These are big, heavy, because they pull boats, right? Mm. Big, heavy boats hit the front of the plane. And it hit the plane, it shook the plane. And when it shook the plane, that's the moment I felt the water for the first time. Because you go, right? You got adrenaline. You don't feel anything, man. You're like Superman, right? You don't feel anything until that moment. And I felt water. I'm like, man, I got to get out of here. This thing's going down, right? And then I had to swim in 36-degree water. And with not only fully clothed, but I had jet fuel in the water.
But you're still in the cabin at this stage, are you?
I'm still in the cabin until I jumped out and I started swimming.
Mm.
And that's the moment I felt like, I got to get out of here now, man. I'm not going down inside of a plane, because the thing and you'll appreciate this where you live. The first thought that I had, what flashed through my mind was that movie Titanic.
Yeah.
When that boat tipped up.
Yeah.
And all I can remember,
then it goes down suddenly. Yeah.
And it sucked everything with it around it, right? And I was like, don't be close. You got to get out of here, man.
Yeah.
Right? That's why I jumped in and swam the closest boat that I could find. And it's 36-degree water, already been in the water, waist deep in 36-degree water for 7 minutes plus.
Yeah.
Fully clothed, and there's jet fuel in the water. And that's why I wear glasses, because I got jet fuel in my eyes swimming.
Wow.
But I always thank my mom and my dad, because, if they had made me learn how to swim, that's why I talk about moments matter. It's that moment when you learn how to swim, it's no big deal, right?
Mm.
And all of a sudden, you got to save your life by swimming. And that's why I swim now with the Navy SEALs and Special Ops, raising money. Not only about awareness, but raising money for them. But yeah, that's what happened. And there's a whole, this story goes on for a long time, but that's what happened. There's two parts of this. You were exactly correct, getting it down and getting out.
Yeah.
And fortunately for us, we had a crew of passengers who came together as a team. And as I mentioned that night on several TV shows I were on, the real heroes were the first responders. They were there.
Mm. One of the things that surprised me is that there were 155 passengers on the aircraft. I wonder, or I imagine, if I was in a plane crash, you would almost expect that people would look after themselves and their family, and there would be chaos and a scrabble to the exit. So if you're up in front of the plane, you just want to get off. Did you experience that? Which is perfectly natural. People are terrified and they're fighting for survival. So,
of course.
Did you experience that? Or to what degree did everyone come together?
Great question, because this doesn't get talked about a lot. No, it was so quiet. It was the term I used that night on CBS when I was on with Katie Couric, it was controlled chaos. Mm. Well, yeah, there were a lot of things happening very quickly, and you got to get going, but no one lost their heads. And I'll give you an example. And I'll give you an example. When I realized why, it was later on, probably 2 or 3 months later, I was actually standing in the airport in Orlando, Florida. I was on a business trip coming back, and at that time and still today, I get to talk to the captains and the crew because of who I am. Right? They know.
Yeah, yeah, I can
So
imagine.
I have that opportunity to have that because they also want to know what's going on. Right? Tell
Yeah,
me what really happened. So
yeah.
I was standing there, Paul, talking to the captain of this flight, and he said, if this happens here, you have a totally different outcome, even if I could do what he did. I said, what do you mean? He goes, listen, you got to remember, look, he said, look around you. So what kind of people are flying on this plane? Now, I don't know if you've ever been to Orlando, Florida,
I have
Disney World and
many times. Yeah,
yeah, right. It's usually families, vacationers, right? A few business people like me,
yeah.
right? He said, yeah. I said, what kind of people are on your plane? People coming out of New York, 90% of them were business people
Mm,
because that's the difference. The passenger makeup of the plane had everything to do with that
yeah.
outcome. And I at first I didn't, but it was brilliant because it's exactly right. You know, if if we have the same passengers, if we have passengers from Orlando on that flight, you know, people go chaos, right? Because he referenced a movie, and I don't know if you've seen this movie called Flight with Denzel Washington.
Yes, I have.
He flies from Orlando to Atlanta, and then he does something stupid, right?
Mm,
But he's going down, right? And people are going crazy. He said that's what happened because look at the passenger makeup of this plane.
okay.
So what I tell people, and when I do my business talks, I talk about this because it's like one of the key strategies out of this, and I can use this as a sort of example is I tell you having the right people and the right seats on the plane makes all the difference in the world for
Yeah,
your company.
yeah.
And if you don't have those right, you can have the right people in the wrong seats in your company and watch what happens,
Mm.
right? So it's a great metaphor. It became a great metaphor for me, that story, and he told me this. So yeah, that's the answer to the question. Is I think no one really freaked out. We only had two families on the plane. We had
Mm.
one older lady and her daughter, and then one family. The rest were
Mm.
business people who were focused, right?
Well, I can imagine had you been sitting on that, and you said you have a wife and children, had you been sitting on that flight with your family, I suppose instinctively your reaction would have been to take care of your family. And
Correct.
maybe you still would have gotten your family off and come back and helped other people, but I think that's a natural reaction. I worry is the wrong word, but yeah, I do. It concerns me sometimes that in that situation, because I've never been in that sort of situation. Is it human nature? Is it our nature to become selfish? You know, when you see these like survival shows or sorry, these movies about apocalypse or whatever, where the world is going crazy and people are in these silos instead of working together, of fighting each other. And I wonder, is that the dark side of human nature?
I understand what you're saying, and yeah, I see that a lot likewise. And though I think what, like I mentioned it earlier, I don't know if it's different, but what's maybe happened that day is everybody understood the mission.
Mm.
And and people, well, what's the
Yeah,
mission? And the
yeah,
mission, and if you've seen the movie Sully, it was actually said in the movie Sully,
yes,
and it was like the unspoken way of between us. And it was in the scene where one of the ferry boat captains was talking. He goes, "The mission of the day is what? No one dies today."
yeah.
And that was the unspoken mission.
Mm.
No one said, "Hey, this is our mission. Let's do this." Right? It was like no one. We're here together. No one's going to die on this watch, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's my watch, the captain's, other passengers, we're in this thing together, right? Because if one of us goes down, this whole thing goes away, right? And that's the difference, right? That is the difference. And because if you look at it, if one passenger perishes in this flight, they get rid of the story quickly. Look what happened, and unfortunately, what happened in Washington D.C. a couple of weeks ago.
Mm.
I spoke in Washington D.C. at a resort on the Potomac River this week. All right there,
Yeah.
and it was an amazing experience because people were really intrigued, but they also could see outside down the river where this thing happened. And I'm like, yeah, this is how quickly things change, right? But now you don't hear about it now, though, do you?
Yeah.
You don't hear it now because people perished, unfortunately.
I remember one of the things from watching the movie, and I don't know how accurate it was. You can tell me, but the captain to me did such an amazing job, and it's back to this. It's back to this idea of preparation, and all these moments you prepare to your life, and suddenly it happens, and instead of chaos, you become calm and you become focused, and now you have a mission. And he clearly did that. And if the movie is an accurate reflection, he actually got a lot of hard time of being accused of being. I mean, I know he came good. It came good for him in the end. But even watching that, I really felt from now. Tom Hanks plays it very, very well. But I really felt from going, this guy is a hero. He has
Yeah.
saved all. He's done an incredible thing, and yet he's getting abuse for it, or he's not getting. Maybe it's a question of they want to blame somebody.
Well, that's it. I mean, all the pastors you were referencing the NTSB hearing,
Yeah,
and in the movie, and all
yeah,
of the pastors were invited to that.
yeah.
I didn't go. I know there were 4 pastors that did attend,
Hmm.
and I actually got to speak to one of them about really what happened, the real life, all right, not the
Hmm.
movie life,
Yeah.
okay.
Okay.
And they said they were direct questions,
Hmm.
right? They have to. They have to have direct
That's the
questions.
job. Yeah.
It wasn't though, but as honorary or as like it was. But it comes down to one thing. And I've talked to many people. I have a very close friend with the emergency response leader at US Airways. She and I were very close friends,
Hmm.
and she reminded me, says this comes down to one thing: money. Who's going to pay for the plane?
Yeah. Of course. Yeah.
If they pin it on him, right? Or if they pin it wasn't pilot error, right?
Hmm.
So it came down to that, and he, of course, he was a master on how he handled it, right?
Hmm.
And this is one of the things I teach about, right, in my talks likewise, because everyone wants to talk about AI right now and technology, and listen, it's tremendous technology, but what you can't take out is the human touch,
Hmm.
humanity, and that's what he talks about, right? You can probably have these planes fly 99% of the time, right? But when something happens, right, you
Hmm.
need that human the eyeballs on it, right? So fortunately, we had a captain and a first officer. I give him as much credit. Jeff Skiles. I give him as much credit because he was actually the one flying the plane when all this happened, as you know the story, right? And
Yeah.
he said, the captain said, my plane, right?
Hmm.
Took it over, which is
Yeah.
the right thing to do, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I give them both of them all the credit in the world. So
I- um, uh, you have spent a long time with Tony Robbins, and I've done. I think I've done all of Tony Robbins' key courses, both in the UK and in the US. And I know Tony does this thing which somehow comes to mind of you having your power move, and then he tells you to step up, step
right,
up, step up, and you were immersed in that for a decade. You weren't in the audience, but you're
yep,
immersed in that, and I wonder if that somehow prepare.
yep,
It's wired into you
yep,
that when it does happen, it's like instinctive. Panic is not an option. It's like I've been pre-programmed physically, mentally, emotionally. I step up. Was that what it
yeah.
felt like?
Well, thank you for that because it's I tell people one of the skill sets that I learned through my experience, and if you've been through Tony Robbins, you know this. The first thing he does, right? The first thing he talks about is state management.
Yes, this is it
You have to
exactly.
manage your state, right?
Yeah,
So that's the one that kicked in initially, right?
yeah,
Because and three ways to do it, right? Is through your physiology,
yeah,
your language patterns, right, or your focus.
mm,
And I didn't have a chance to get up and jump up and down, right?
yeah,
Do
yeah,
my
yeah.
power. I couldn't do that. The
No,
captain couldn't get jump up and down,
no.
right? Um, so I used the skill set of internal dialogue,
Yeah,
right? Asking myself a different question, right? It's like, okay, it's coming. What's my options? What am I challenging? What I have my
mm,
mind going. What the captain focused on was focus,
yeah,
right? That's the power he used to manage his state, right? His focus. But yeah, when it came time when all of a sudden you're realizing there's no crew on the on your side of the plane, yeah, it was instinctively it's like it's time you step up, right? You've learned all this stuff. I was like, I didn't say it then. It's like you know all this stuff. It's time for you to step up and lead and handle it,
mm,
right? And handle it. And I think there's many heroes on that plane, right? I mean, the flight attendants, right, who did a magnificent job, some passengers. But it's that moment when you have to step up, right? And that's why we do learn all these things when we go to these events and what
yeah,
we're all teaching right now is because I tell people, and unfortunately we've seen this a lot in the United States recently. Everybody's going to have their own personal plane crash moment.
mm,
Some, and I use the word personal plane crash as it could be a health issue, it could be a car accident, right? It could be a lot of things,
mm,
and everybody's going to have one of those moments because one thing I've learned through my life, and you're probably as wise as I am, you don't get through life without something going on, right? Something's going to happen. So you better be able to handle it, manage your state and step up, right? And especially when we just went through this pandemic. I don't know
Mm.
what happened in Ireland. I know what happened in the United States. The people who could manage their states and step up and be creative, right, resourceful, are the ones who got it. The people who stepped back and waited are the ones who are still challenged right now, right?
Yeah,
So
I mean, this idea of managing your state, which maybe we both learned from Tony Robbins, but I think it is hugely important because I have no doubt that of the people on the plane, and not even just the plane, because we're talking about any sort of a major
right,
crisis or challenge which hits us. And I mix a lot with entrepreneurs, and when I talk about success in business, the thing I know is that all of the people I know have worked long and hard and overcome many challenges for the success they have. I just don't know anyone who fell out of bed one Monday morning and 6 months later was a multimillionaire. Maybe they exist, but for most human beings, it comes over a period of time. But that comes down to their ability to deal with that challenge. And I suppose when you then emerged from the lifeboat and you got back to dry land and you knew there was it was over. I suppose there is a trauma. You have experienced a trauma, and there it seems there is also a choice there. I think that's what you're saying. There's a choice, and what what you're an example of is being in a situation that would obviously terrify and traumatize most people. As a result of that, you've created the life you now live. I'm not going to say you look back on a positive event, but I would imagine you look back as an event that had a very positive impact on your life, and through your speaking and writing, you've shared that with a lot of people. That seems to be key here. There may be people on that flight who are now terrified to live
I
because of
still several people haven't got back on the plane yet.
yeah.
That point really came to life for me probably about 6 or 7 weeks after this, when I and several of the passengers and the crew were invited to be back on Good Morning America ABC show here in the United States. And that's actually when I found out I was the last passenger off the plane, because they actually showed a picture of me being the last passenger. I said, wow, I didn't know I was the last passenger off the
I've seen the photo. Yeah.
plane. Yeah, I was like, wow. But we were back in the green room, Paul, and at the end, and we're just talking and stuff. And one passenger got very, I would say, vocal or just excited, to say it that way, right? And he basically said, I never want to see you people again, right? I'm done, right?
Yeah.
And at first I started thinking, so what's wrong with this dude, right? I mean, we survived a plane crash. I mean, geez, we're on national TV. I
Yeah.
mean, it could be a lot worse.
Yeah.
But then
It
I
could. Yeah.
realized,
You
but
could be
then
at
I
the bottom of
realized
the Hudson. Yeah.
yeah, it's like, then I realized something, because I found out that he was going through a divorce and he lost his job. So the meaning he attached to the plane crash was devastation.
Mm.
The meaning I attached to it was a blessing.
Yeah.
Right? Same situation,
Yeah.
two different meanings. So it all comes down to the meaning you attach to something, right?
Mm.
It comes down to that basic thing. And the way people who come through things like this reframe the meaning. Yes, I
Mm.
mean, it's pretty basic stuff, but that's how simple it is. I did a TED talk on this
Mm.
because it's called post-traumatic growth. How do you grow out of a situation of a traumatic experience? Where many people from that day, as you mentioned, have had challenges, which are understandable.
Mm.
Things called PTSD, right?
Mm.
And so, um, for me, I had what's called PTGS, post traumatic growth.
Mm.
And I shared the strategies in my TED talk about how do you grow out of a traumatic life experience. Meaning is one of them. State management is one of them, right? But one of the things is, that helped me a lot. And one of the things we learned once again with Tony, I mean, it's all the training. I talk about the moments matter, right?
Yeah.
It's that moment when you hear it and you don't think you're going to use it,
Yeah.
right? But it was the moment, when I remember when Tony was saying something on stage about it, something, I guess one of the stories he tells, and he talks about how you got to get it out of your body, right? Fortunately for me, the weekend after, that plane crash, I spoke at my church for the first time, and it gave me the opportunity to get it out of my body, So I've spoken over 1,700 times around the world. And what helps me compared to maybe some other people who challenge is I get it out of my body, right? Or some people just hold it in. And as you know, when you hold it in, it starts chunking. And that's what happened during the pandemic. right? Pandemic. You have a pandemic. Oh my gosh. And then we in the United States we have things called, social justice questions. Oh my God. And then we have this thing called police. Oh my God. And I don't have any connection because I can't leave my house. Oh, and by the way, I went through a plane crash. I don't know what the heck I'm going to do.
Mm.
Stack, 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 stack.
Mm.
Which happens what? And when you know what happens when it stacks, right? Stacks so deep you can't get out.
But also you no longer recognize that you're stacking these. It's
That's right.
just your experience, and you're calling it your experience. You're calling it reality. You're not aware that you're
It's your
continuing.
identity, right?
It's
It's
your
like
identity. Yeah.
it's your identity, right? And
Yeah.
that's why I help people who have gone as they come to me and they ask me these questions. I give them the strategy, right? I mean,
Mm.
I could help them all they want, but this is why I went back into the Hudson River with the Navy SEALs, because when I found out, it's a long story. I won't go into it. I wasn't intending to go swim the Hudson River 3.1 miles with Navy SEAL. It wasn't my intent. All
Yeah.
right. And especially going back into the Hudson River,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
It wasn't my intent. But when I found out that this is going back 4 years, there's 22 uh, military people commit suicide a day in the United
Wow.
States.
Wow.
A day.
A
Now it's up
day.
to 40. And now it's up to 40.
Wow.
And I was appalled by that number. I was like, why? It's because what happened, right? COVID, stack, stack, stack,
Mm.
out of the military. They're out away from their structure, right? They don't have a job.
Mm.
Stack, 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 and they can't get out of it.
Mm.
They don't know how to get out of it, right? So that's why I raised money doing what I do for that cause. Now I've been doing it for special ops for the last 2 years.
Mm.
First 2 years I did it for Navy SEALs. Now I do for all special ops in the United States. I'll raise money because the meaning they attach is devastation.
Mm.
Right? I can't get out of it. And when the questions you ask yourself, you get the right answer. Right? You're right. You can't get out of it.
Mm.
Right? You're locked. Or ask a better question. If I could get out of it, how would I do it?
Mm.
Reframe the question. So that's what I do. I help people, when they come to me, how to handle this stuff, because all the moments that led up to this moment prepared me, and I executed in that moment, right? And I've got a visual evidence. I got, like Tony talks about evidence, right?
Mm.
I got visual evidence. I've actually done it. It's interesting, to share this. I was actually in Orlando last year at a conference, and a lady who speaks on leadership, and I speak on leadership likewise. So we were comparing notes, right? And she said, all my leadership. I said, have you ever been a leader in a company? No. Have you ever led? I said, no. She goes, all my leadership comes from theology, like the books,
Theory.
right?
Yeah.
Theory. And I said, well, that's good. I said, mine actually comes from practical experience.
Yeah.
So and she goes, I told her the story. She goes, I said, yeah, that's why, what I do, as we talk about, you can talk theory all the time, but theory
Yeah.
doesn't have any feelings,
Yeah.
right? Right? It's visual and or auditory, but it doesn't have any kinesthetic, right? When you experience something, you have kinesthetic, and you know as well as I know, when you get people feeling it, right?
Mm.
They get it.
Yeah.
So, I always look for somebody, as we all learn from our friend Tony, work with people who've actually walked their talk,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, there's a lot of people that talk a big game, but talk to somebody who's actually been through it, right?
Mm.
And can give you examples and teach you the step by steps on how to really handle this stuff. And that's part of my mission right now.
I will invite. I love theory. I love concepts. I love ideas. But I will invite nobody on the podcast who is talking from theory, because it means very little to me. I will only speak to people who have actual practical experience. And yesterday, I interviewed very successful businessman. He's now writer, speaker, and runs a lot of things called Cameron Harold. And I had a great chat with him yesterday. He's yet to be published, but he said something that really resonated with me, because I never went to college. And he said to me, he didn't go to college because he wasn't good. I mean, he wasn't good. He said I was a BC grade student. He said, but the interesting thing to me was, he said he's met so many entrepreneurs who just weren't particularly good in school, so they
That's right.
get out. So they get out and they get on with it. So who do you want to speak to? The person who has been through the event, built a business, had your experience, and had to implement it in their lives. They've eaten their own cooking, or someone who's read a book.
That's
Because
right.
I mean, you've a couple of great books if I read them, am I
Yeah.
now qualified to talk about what it's like to survive a plane crash? I don't think so. I mean, there's lessons I can take from, but
That's right.
it doesn't qualify me. But
Yeah.
I'm thinking for people listening, and something you said there stood out, and I think it's really important as a practical thing. Is you said it's the question you ask yourself, and that seems to be really key to the turning point when you're in that moment.
That's right. Yeah.
The question you're going to ask yourself.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I kept that. If I survive this, what am I going to do? That was the question I kept asking myself,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
I could have said, man, this is horrible.
yeah,
I'm not going to make it, right? And all of a sudden, my focus goes where that energy goes.
yeah, yeah,
But the question I asked, if I survive this, how can I do it? I'll up
yeah,
out, I'll up out, I'll up out.
yeah,
That's how it worked. And
yeah,
I think you're exactly right. I mean, it's one of the things I talk about is how high velocity decision making. And as you just mentioned this a second ago, so I'm going to reference it. And I talk about this. I give an example of like Elon Musk
mm,
compared to somebody like a Boeing, right? Where you have Elon Musk who put a space capsule up and it blows up, it blows up, it blows up, but all of a sudden it works.
mm,
Where you got Boeing who can't get out of their own way because they can't get it out.
yeah,
So they don't get out and just do it, right?
mm,
Entrepreneurs exactly that. Entrepreneurs just go out. I'll fail. I'll fail
yeah,
2 or 3 times, right?
yeah,
I'll eventually figure this thing out because of what the first thing we talked about. Because I'm gonna get in proximity of people who've actually done it,
mm,
right? Proximity is power. I
yeah,
mean, I talk about this and I give Tony all the credit. I said, that was one of the first things I learned in 1991 or 92. I think it was 92 when I went to his first event. He talked about proximity is power, and we had 300 people on the La Costa doing a date with death. 300 people. That's all we had. So we had proximity, right?
yeah,
You
yeah,
have now you 10,000, 20,000 people. You can't get close to them.
yeah,
So proximity is power.
yeah.
You're
But you're
not
getting
somebody who's not going to walk their talk, I guess is the best way to say it.
the experience in the room, and I've done Date with Destiny. I've done all Tony's courses, but I remember my first time to do Unleash the Power Within, and it's probably 18 years ago. I can't really remember, but I didn't really know what I was letting myself in for. And I arrived over to an arena in London, and it's 10,000 people. I'm wondering why. I didn't bring food in or anything. Which I mean, you should probably bring a sleeping bag. But I didn't
Was
bring
that the
any.
Docklands? Was that the one at the Docklands?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Okay,
yeah.
okay,
I'm trying to think what they
okay.
call the center. I can't remember, but
Yeah,
yeah. So it's like at least 10,000 people in the room, and the experienced people arrived in with bags of food and drinks because they know the man never leaves the stage.
that's right.
Which is not what you expect. And then we did the fire walk, and so we literally are in from whatever morning till you walk out of there. It could be midnight by the time you walk out there at night. It's crazy. But
Minimum.
then I
Yeah,
understood that what he was doing was he talks about immersion, was immersing you in that, because that's the difference between theory, because that you said it earlier. Now it's in your body.
right.
You've been with him for 4 days, but it's in you've experienced it physically, mentally, emotionally. It's in your body. Um, but if you just open a book, it's not in your body. And what I've done, well, I certainly did with Tony, lots of the people, is I took that idea of immersion, and I've continued for 20 years or longer, continually studying, reading, speaking to people. It's why I do the podcast, because it's not a one time. You have to continue immerse
Right.
yourself if you want to be prepared for both the small situations and the big situations. If you want to be ready when it occurs, and clearly you've proven you're ready. You've
I was
passed the
blessed.
test.
Because I mean, you probably know this from my stories. I wasn't supposed to be on that plane. I was scheduled at the 5 o'clock flight.
Yes.
So I think I was on that plane for a reason. I really believe that I was on
Yeah.
that plane for a reason.
Yeah.
Just like the right captain was on that plane for the reason, right? I
Yes.
mean, I mean everything. When I tell people, when you talk about a miracle, you have to have a lot of things go right
Yes.
to have a miracle, right?
Yeah.
And if you look at that day after the birds hit and the explosion and things going, everything started breaking right because we had the right people there in the right seats on
Yeah.
the plane. And I was just blessed to be a part of this. It's turned out to be a blessing for me because I get to do what I want because, you know, it came down to I was still head of security for Tony doing all this, and we were in Chicago. He called me to a suite. Said, "You need to go. I'm going to find somebody else. You need to do this yourself,"
Yeah.
because he knew as long as I had that as a crutch,
Yeah.
right, I never do what I would be able to do.
Yeah.
And I tell people one of the great things that he did for me then and made me realize he had more faith in me than I had in me.
Yeah.
So he kicked me out of the nest, and he's always been a great supporter of mine. I mean, in fact, on my second book, has something on the cover. It's so nice to do this for me. But,
Mm.
you got to have, and I actually put a post out on this today on LinkedIn. You got to bet on yourself, right? All these moments are there. So when something happens, listen, I've handled tougher stuff before. And that's one of the things about the firewalk. If
Yeah.
I can walk across fire, what else can I do, right? So it's like if you bet on yourself, because you know what, more often or not, you're probably going to win because you probably handled something in the past. All you got to do now is do what? Associate it, right? Associate it.
I'm going to say my life changed. I changed my life after the firewalk. I remember very, very, very clearly. But that was because, firstly, I didn't know there was going to be a firewalk. I didn't. I should have. I was chaotically busy. I mean, I'm sure you've been there in your life where you're working too much long hours. I was in that zone 20 years ago, and so I just turned up. Kind of, someone said go to this, I go. I turned up. So I had no idea, and I'm sitting in the arena, and he has the flames on the screen behind, and I'm going.
Yep.
What about? Should I leave? But I didn't know. But after doing the fire walk, you've overcome a major challenge. You get off, and I was so elated. I rang my wife. She goes, "Are you on cocaine or something?" I don't do
Yeah,
drugs,
well,
but
that's what
you're
happened.
yeah, you're so elated. But in that moment of removing, so I was fearless for those few moments. I was fearless, and that fearlessness allowed me to look at my life and go, "You need to change this. You need to change this." I always knew about those things, but I didn't have the courage to
Right.
address them.
You got to burn,
Um,
like you told me, you got to burn your boats, man. You got to burn your boats, right? You got to just, there's no other options. You go all in. And
yeah.
so I'm glad that you did that. I'm glad you stayed for the firewalk. I probably saw you there somewhere in the 10,000 plus people.
No doubt.
And
Little did we know we'd be talking
yeah,
all these years later, which is wonderful. I want to be respectful of your time, but my question as we get towards the end of the podcast is: so if someone is driving in the car now and they're having listened to this, and you've told a great story, and it's got to be very, very inspiring, but they're currently in a difficult situation, and they maybe they know, but they have two choices. They have the choice to go down the road of becoming a victim of it,
that's
or
right.
or as you did, turning it into one of the greatest turning points in your life. What's some practical steps you can give to that man or woman driving their car right now and listening? What's something they can do to move themselves in the right direction?
I'll leave you with one last story because something like this just happened to me a few years ago. Long story short, I just got done speaking down in Georgia, and I was driving home, and it was a lot of traffic, so I was going slow, and I get a phone call from a friend from my Tony Robbins world. Said he had a friend who just survived the avalanche in Nepal. She was one of four people that survived, and other people perished.
Hmm.
And she lived up in northern Ontario in Canada, and she locked herself down and would not talk to anybody. She
Mhm.
won't come out. She goes, "Can you talk to her?" I was like, "What am I going to talk to her about? I'm in a plane crash. You don't get that, right?" She
Yeah.
goes, "You survived that. You can at least talk to her."
Hmm.
So I did, and he made a three-way call. I got on the phone with her. I started talking to her, and she has survivor guilt. Okay, why did they die? And she's asking crappy questions, right?
Yeah.
But she couldn't get. So I said, okay, I said, listen, give me a week. Let me call you back in a week. Just let me call you back because I need to figure out a game plan, right?
Yeah.
So the game plan that I figured out was, and through my proximity is power connections, I said, what she needs to hear is from somebody else who's been something like that, so they can hear how to overcome. I can't tell her. I can tell her, but I give her another point of reference, right? So through my connections, I found somebody over in Liberia who his day basically is he gets up, he walks down, he gets water, he walks back, makes a fire,
Hmm. That's
and he's
the
happy.
yeah.
He's happy, right? He has nothing. He has
Hmm.
nothing, right? He's happy. So through our connections, we got this four-way call going, right? And I get back on the guy. I said, listen, I just wanted to talk to you because I want you to talk to somebody who basically has nothing, and just to hear how they deal with nothing.
Hmm.
And he started telling her how happy he was. He has life. He's got a family, and because she had a house, she had a phone,
Yeah.
right? She had probably, and so through that point, through giving her a different reference,
Hmm.
right? The same somebody who has you think you have it bad, you survived. I said you survived like I survived. You got a story to tell about survival.
Yeah.
right? You can't do anything about it. Because I told her, I said, one of the first things I told her, I said, I got interviewed right after, probably about 2 weeks after the plane crash. Maybe four, it was actually 4 weeks, by a TV company, TV up in Montreal. And it was immediately after that plane crashed in Buffalo where all 40 people perished. And I actually had a client on that plane. So it was very difficult for me. But I got on this interview, and the first question he asked me, Paul, was, why do you think they died but you didn't? And I was first taken aback. And then I said, well, I guess it just wasn't my time.
Mm.
I told her, I said, listen, it wasn't your time. It was their time.
Mm.
You have your whole life in front of you, right? And there are people all around you. So the answer to your question is, first thing that I would suggest is find somebody else who's actually having a worse day than you are, right? All right? Because somebody out there is having a worse time than you are, right? If you're in a car, you have a car. If you have a phone, you got a phone, right? Other people don't even have that stuff.
Yeah.
I would get with somebody, find another point of reference. And it's a lot easier now. You go on the internet. You can hear all these stories, right, of people who have overcome, right? So if you're having a bad day, ask yourself a different question. First thing we do, right, Paul, is what? Change your theology. Get up and jump and down. Change your question and focus on, if I could do this, how would I do it? And focus on something more positive. And it's called, and here, I'll leave you with this term because I've learned this through my coaching from my coach up in Toronto. Focus on the gain, not the gap. Most people focus on the gap. And the gap is, I'm looking forward.
What's missing? What's wrong?
Yeah, it's like, I should be here now, right? I've done enough. I earned this. Instead of looking how far you've come, the gain. That's where most people get down, is they focus on the gap instead of the gain. So the things I would tell this person in the car is focus on, look how far you've come. And that's the last thing I do when I talk. I should take people through a kinesthetic mode, because one of the most effective things you can do is I can tell them and they can hear me, but if I can have them feel it, understanding what it's taken for you to get to this point in your life, your family, your creator, your teachers, your work. I mean, there's so many people that helped you get to where you are, right? Have gratitude. Have gratitude. And gratitude, there's no fear. So the last thing I do in my conversation with this is I always talk about the power of gratitude. I show people and let them feel gratitude, because when I go through this process with people, I have people crying, because all of a sudden they realize it's not about me. It's not about me, right? It takes all of us. I can think here because of myself, right? So if you're going through a challenge, just remember, it's not about you, man. Just have gratitude. Give thanks to something bigger than yourself, and that's more than you get more grace. The more grace you get, the more opportunities you have. Pretty simple.
Gratitude is definitely a changer. But the one thing that strikes me also is from that moment, you certainly could have gone into a box. You could be sitting in a room, depressed, overweight, never go out eating pizza because you can't. But actually, what you did is you went out and served people.
Right.
So not only has it changed your life, but you speak so eloquently about it. But you've had the opportunity to impact so many people. So I also think for all of us, it shifts when one of the questions is, how can I serve? And you're probably very lucky to discover that, I suppose, early on when you got that opportunity to speak at the church, because you realize people want to hear what I have to say, and there's value, and that's enormously rewarding. No matter whatever other reward you get out of it, when you serve other people, that's a reward in itself.
Yeah, I'll leave you with the last words my mentor Bill shared with me before he passed away in 1997, when he said, all the things he gave me, all the lessons and the handwritten notes and everything, he said, just do not let this die with you.
Do not let this die.
It's incumbent. And this is one of the things in my second book, and why Tony wrote what he did in my book. Because if you go to my second book, From Turmoil to Triumph, what Tony says is this: he didn't become Tony Robbins because he's Tony Robbins. It's because Jim Rohn took interest in him.
Yes.
Right? So find somebody to take interest in and leave them everything you have.
Yeah.
Because you never know what one thing might flip that cord for them, right? Flip their whole life around. So just the last thing I'll say is, don't let it die with you. You're expected to mentor somebody else. It's not a should. It's a must.
It's a must. What a great way to end the call. Dave, it's been an absolute pleasure. What a wonderful story and so many great lessons. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.